Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. So this is going to be a video about the Eton War game, and here I am at the eponymous wall at Eton, and then Slough Road is just the other side of it because Slough is that away. Anyway, so this wall was built in 1717, and there may well have been some similar form of football beforehand, but the Eton War game as we know it can only date from 1717, certainly played at this exact site. So every town, every school had its own form of football. The Football Association, as we know, it wasn't founded in the 1860s to codify the rules of the most common game, because the Transport Revolution allowed people to travel around the realm so much that they were going so far in one day as to play against teams who followed a completely different code. So anyway, but this game remains the same and remains unique to Eton, and its rules were written down in the early 19th century. Certainly there are all sorts of references from 1811 onwards. I don't know if there are written references to it from the 18th century. Certainly people wrote things like, "We play with a bag full of wind." Doesn't necessarily mean it was this game. So it's played in the furrow. So the furrow is about 110 metres long, because you'd plough a furrow. If you're interested in horse racing, they're talking about furlongs, the final furlong, which I think is a unit of measurement, roughly 110 metres as well. So there are two teams, and the team approaching from this end is referred to as Slough. There are always teams from Eton College, but this one, if you're approaching this end, you'd be called Slough, because Slough is that way to the north. If you're approaching the opposite end, you'd be called Eton, because, well, you're coming from that end. And at half-time, they swap sides. I think there's a coin toss to see who starts with which end. Anyway, I'll explain these lines for you. So this first white line here on the wall, this is like a dead ball line, like in rugger. You can see it there, and obviously they paint it on the grass in the season. It's only played in the winter, really, because the ground will be too hard in the summer, or really even in September. So you must wait for it to get wet, and then if you hit the ground, it's not going to hurt too much. These three lines, I can't remember the significance of those. I don't think it's anything. But this line that goes all the way to the top is the beginning of calx. This is called bad calx. Calx being the Latin word for chalk, because I think those were drawn in chalk originally, not painted. And so they start at the midway point, but I'll show you that later. And supposing I'm Eton, as in approaching from the Eton end, and so you've got the ball, and you can push and shove, and you can pick up the ball, you can kick the ball, is you get to here, and I'd get the ball between my foot. Well, let me see if I can show you my foot and the wall, and the ball is here, and I'm able to touch it. It's touching my foot and the wall, and I touch it with one hand and say, "Got it." And then the umpire would come in, tell all the others, "Stop, move out of the way," and he'd see that, yes, that was a proper shy, a shy being worth 1 point, S-H-Y, shy, and then be allowed to pick up the ball and allowed to throw it at yon tree. And you see the tree there, we're playing in winter, so it wouldn't have that canopy. So we go over towards the tree. Now you could score anywhere further up. You might not be able to get close to the wall, first of all, because of the defenders. Anywhere up to here, before the sort of dead ball line, you'd be able to do that, score a shy, as in, got it. Yeah, the ball is there. And then throw, if you got this here, be a bit easier. But look, how far is that? A good 20 metres, I would estimate. Well, let's try it out. Maybe you can tell how many paces I'm going. And then there's a line painted onto that tree, and you'd have to hit the tree on the line or below. Below the line, because if I remember, in this sport, as in the field game, on the line is over the line. So the ball is touching the line, yeah, that means it's over the line, it's missed. It has to be not touching it at all, down here, if my hand represents the ball. And then you've got 10 points, that's a goal, but those are vanishingly rare. There's been none scored for over a decade. So the main teams to play are college, as in that's the King's Scholars House, and the oppidans, which is everybody else. So Eton's got almost 1,300 boys. The great majority of those are oppidans, and the minority are King's Scholars, or KSs. So a King's Scholar could also be called a colleger. Right, perhaps I hope that's not too confusing. So Eton is a school, even though it's officially called a college. American tourists often used to ask me whether it's a college or a high school. But of course, in American parlance, it's a high school because it's for boys aged 13 to 18. No girls, but there were some in the 70s and early 80s. Housemasters' daughters were allowed to go to do A-levels. Anyway, so Then there's the ladder, which is like the halfway line. And the St Andrew's Day match, which is 30th of November, is the biggest match of the year, and that is College versus the Oppidans. And so Oppidan Wall, they gather somewhere else in the school. Everybody's milling around looking at various things. It's a bit like a winter open day, St Andrew's Day. I don't know why St Andrew's Day is so important to Eton. And they run around in pairs chanting oi, 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 oi. So they're rhythmically chanting to psych themselves up into a state of sufficient frenzied aggression. And they get on the other side of that wall and they give their speech, and they jump over. And do they say, vivat floret atona et hic noster ludem moralis, or something like that? May Eton flourish in this our war game. Probably got it a bit wrong, I'm woeful at Latin. Now, the ladder, methinks it's here. You see those metal bits, and they jump over there and think, my God, that's impressive. Look at the height of that wall. Got to be 6 meters at least. It's much lower on the other side because the road is there, and even then there's a ladder, so it's actually not very difficult to jump over at all. And they jump over and they take position. So I've never seen one of them twist their ankle, but I suppose they're athletic adolescents, they're not going to. Whereas over there, where you're seeing a bit of the headmaster's house, but the more modern red brick, the higher stuff with that black diamond pattern, you probably can't make it out. That tower, where is it? Oh, this tower, my finger is, I was almost on there. That's part of college, it's in the House of the King's Scholars. So they advance over there, they link arms, they come around that fence, they come around and they advance this away. As in all linked arms. So it's 14 play. Is that right? And there's the 15th man? God, I should know. I don't even know the numbers. I think it's 11 play, and there's a 12th man who just makes a speech, who's there wearing the top. So College Wall, as the King's Scholars, they wear orange and purple vertical stripes, whereas Oppidan Wall, they wear, what am I talking about? College Wall wear purple and white stripes. Oppidan Wall wear orange and purple stripes. So they both got a bit of purple in there, you would have noticed. So that's traditional fashion, how they've been doing it. I mean, I've seen photos as far back as the 1930s of doing that. I don't know if College Wall will have the same rituals. So we've come up towards good calx as it goes. Remember I said good, I remember calx is chalk. These lines are all in chalk. So now, I don't know what this is. Maybe this is showing that you're very close to good calx. And there's the actual beginning of good calx, this line which goes all the way up. So long as the ball is completely beyond there, you could score, right? By holding it here, balancing against your foot and the wall, and then got it. The umpire would see, yes, that's a proper shy. This is good calx, maybe partly because that's a wall at the end. If it bounces off the wall and comes back, it's still in play. Now a line will be drawn. You see that white line there on the wall, lined up with that all the way along the furrow, 110 metres, because the pitch is a strip only 5 metres broad. Apparently decades ago, well centuries ago, it used to be 40 metres broad, probably yards actually in those days. But anyway, there's also a lot closer to the scoring place or to the goal. That door is the goal. Pick it up and throw it. And if you can get that, that's 10 points. Now you play on, but goals are so unusual. I don't think 2 goals have been scored in one match. Get it anywhere up to here, you could score against the wall here, or presumably against the wall at the end, which is why it is good calx. So that's it. They start under the ladder, as it's called, and that's like the halfway line. So it's like a scrum, 25 minutes, 5-minute half time, 25 minutes the other way. There's a little rope put up to tell everyone to get back a little bit. Most people in the dark. It's not a spectacular spectator sport because there's so little movement in it, and you can't really see what's going on because there's this scrimmage. So you have 2 walls, that's the 2 tallest guys who are near the wall on each team, 2 seconds, 2 thirds, 2 fourths. Is a fly and a goals or something like that. You could call it long, as in you're effectively your goalie who's going to stay back a bit. The fly, ideally if it comes loose, will be able to dribble up there, so the chap with the best ball skills. I remember my first ever game. It was just a practice under the late Mr. Roddy Foreman. It came coming loose, and we managed to fly hack it all the way on and actually score a shy, and I couldn't believe it. Me, who's born with 2 left feet and 2 left hands, and woeful at every sport, and I thought, my God, have I finally found a sport at which I'm a natural, that I actually scored a shy my very first game, and don't think anybody else did. So I just did that as a sort of a minor sport. Was it an E block or D block? So that Mr. Foreman, who died a few years ago, mathematics speak, formerly captain of school, well, that hit me a heavy blow when I heard he died. Not that I had any contact with him since I left school, because he was an absolutely lovely little chap. there we were, formerly housemaster of Common Lane House, who's been called to his reward, who'd, devoted his entire life to Eton, used to play the war game with us, be in the scrimmage with us. We used to wear gardener's gloves and stuff like that. Now, suddenly it's in a very uncomfortable position, thinking his spine is about to get broken, or he's about to be asphyxiated. He shouts, air, air, air. The other's meant to echo that, air, air, and everyone stops. And I think it's a gentleman's agreement, you don't misuse it to get out of a strategic disadvantage. And then, if there's any breakdown in play, it goes to Slough, then to Windsor, and Slough to Windsor, as in to put the ball in. It's not to advantage the offended party. Seems a bit illogical, but there we go. Anyway, it's not terribly competitive because it almost always ends in a draw. And that's because well over a century ago, somebody got his head stuck under there. You can maybe see little arches at ground level, and they were open, they weren't filled in with bricks as they are now, and drowned in the mud, because as you can imagine, it's a complete mud bath there in the bleak midwinter. The last goal scored in the St Andrew's Day match was 1909, when Harold Macmillan, the future Prime Minister, was playing. Eric Blair KS, better known as George Orwell, he played, Boris Johnson played, and many other prominent people. So college have only got 70 boys to pick from. The Oppidians have got about 1,200, but so you'd think that the Oppidians would win all the time, because the chances are they'll have a great deal more sporting talent, just because they outnumber the colleges so hugely. But as I say, usually nobody wins. A most satisfactory result. So this is just by College Field, which is a playing field. You can play football, or the field game, which is Eton's own bizarre form of football. I played it for 5 years, never really got my head around it, which is only played in the Lent half, as in January to March, with a narrow goal, and the goalkeeper can't use his hands, and used to be rammed rouge, but I think it's not allowed, the ram, because there's a dangerous spinal injury. And you can score a goal in the conventional manner. They have these things called bullies, a bit like a scrum, but one side can't put their heads down, and so forth. All right, so that's probably enough about the Eton war game. Toodaloo.